Hi again, and welcome again to Conversations with Masters on Aging in a Time of Consciousness. This is part 2 of our 4-part series. So this series is about an intention to begin to reframe the conversation around aging. Our intention for this call and for each call of this 4-part series is that they will be used to the highest purpose and for the highest perspective of everyone on the call and for those that will listen to them in the future. Everyone on the call here is an enlightened master who has agreed to be on the call to begin this new conversation about aging in the time of consciousness. We are not saying we have all the answers yet, but we are interested in starting a new conversation, a paradigm shift, and a new higher perspective around our human agreement around aging and what that means or does not mean. You can seek out any of these masters. Everyone has a special gift and some of them share their gift with the public, but you can feel free to reach out to any of them if you want to learn more about them or to communicate directly with them. So today, the topic for part 2 of our 4-part series is, how old am I? And does it really matter? Why do we currently define someone by a number? Why do people ask, and why are people so tied into age number to define us? Is there a better way to answer this question? How do we answer this question when we don't resonate with the current concept of being defined by age and a specific thing like a number? So that's some of the things we're going to discuss today. So who wants to get started? Yes, please, Liz.
What I wanted to share today was just some of the insights and clarity I got around our last conversation. Only it came in after the fact when I allowed myself some stillness, some space around me to really tune in to, what really is the conversation here? What does it all mean? And in our last conversation, there was lots of great points, and it just really reflected how broad a subject this really is, with so many different arms and legs. And so I took a step back, and first of all, we're talking about aging and consciousness. So what does that really mean? Like what does aging mean? When I went to look at the definitions of it, the definitions are really around just the process of getting older. And it brought to mind something that a good friend of mine shared for me. I believe it might have been from A Course in Miracles, and you just touched on this, Sandy, and it's all about nothing has meaning except for the meaning we give it. So what meaning are each of us giving to the whole concept of aging? And this is where we really start to get into a lot of identifying our own limiting beliefs, our own programming, what society reflects to us, our own personal experiences. So a part of the conversation is around that aspect. And we did touch on it the last time around, as our society, particularly, I don't know, I mean, men, you have your own experiences, but personally, I feel as if a lot of the programming and society, the way that it teaches us, like, this is how we're supposed to present ourselves, this is how we're supposed to look as women, presenting an image out into the world. And Blissa last week was talking about, not coloring our hair. And that's a big one for me, because I've been coloring my hair since I was in my early 20s. And, taking a step back, and why do we do that? Really, why do we do that? So there's all that conversation happening, and how we feel within ourselves, doesn't necessarily mean to say we have to stop doing these things, but how do we feel about ourselves if we don't? Or are we in a place where we'd feel good going out into the world in our natural state? And then the second piece is, okay, so if that's kind of aging and the beliefs, the societal conditioning and all of that, what is the higher perspective? What's the higher consciousness? And it really is around our shifting our perspective. And what is that higher perspective? And it really just all does boil down to love. There is only love, loving ourselves, loving all aspects of ourselves, including our physical body, and really truly learning to love ourselves, all aspects of ourselves, which really does take quite a bit of detective work and self-awareness. To see where we're at and where we want to go, and by asking ourselves a lot of questions, because it really is, it's down to us as an individual on choosing to love ourselves, choosing to love our body, and seeing where we might have some beliefs or limitations, and really having a conversation around all of that. And there are lots of different aspects that we can go into around all of this, but I just, for my own personal clarity, those for me are the key points. We're talking today about age and numbers, and it feels to me as if it really is all still coming back to this conversation around loving ourselves, loving our bodies. What does that look like? What do we need to do? And I know that Dawn is going to be able to share her own amazing experiences around that. And yeah, I have some personal experiences I've had myself where I've had miraculous healings, and it was all around really loving myself and accepting myself. I mean, I still have a ways to go, but yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what I would like to add into the conversation. Thank you.
I love that, Liz. I do think the loving part is a huge part of this. I think that's especially a huge starting place before we can even be open maybe to what the other, and a time of consciousness in the fifth dimension, in heaven on earth, what those possibilities are for us that we maybe have never been able to embrace before because we weren't at this point in time. And I think the loving yourself is absolutely the starting place. And I think Diane mentioned on that last week too, and talked about that, about how important that was and how that was the starting place. So thank you.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, Tori.
It's really interesting, and I had not thought of this, but it's come to me lately, is associated with age is a certain belief at whatever number that is as to what value you are. Isn't it interesting, at age 65, retire is equivalent of saying, I offer no more value to the world. I'm just going to go off and just do things. And, I'm just going to do something that's just on my way to death. I mean, and so our value in as a collective belief seems to diminish as the number goes higher. That something is taken away from us that was vital, and it's slowly being torn away from us. It's such an interesting idea that that's what we believe, when the reality is, I remember someone said this, and it really changed my whole view of each year. And they said, I've taken 65 trips or 65 rides around the sun. That's a whole different view. It's like you're at an amusement park and you're just taking another ride and you're just enjoying the ride and whatever. And as soon as they said that, I said, that's exactly what I want to look at it as. Yeah, I've been on all these rides, and I get to go one more time, and I'm going to go one more time a lot of times because that's the fun. And I'm here to enjoy it. And so it's just the idea, like Liz was saying, to take away that number from anything having to do with who we are. That is just some designation that people do when You live in a life where there's a beginning and an ending, and everyone wants to evaluate things based upon where they are along that path.
Yeah, it's almost like they want to put us in a pigeonhole. Interesting you still say that about the going around the circuit. So I did a channeling for myself right before this call. And one of the interesting things that they said to me that the higher consciousness said was how as humans, we like repetition. We like to define things. So a day repeats, a week repeats, a year repeats. So even our birthday celebration, you know, because that's how we've defined this for so long, you know, these pegs of what time means. And time doesn't necessarily mean that, but that's how we clung to it. So just like you said, 65 is a retirement time. That shows you've been like lived here, but I like the going around the circle. And I also think that with, you know, it's defining, like people say, how old are you? And then once you tell them that number, they put you in whatever that category in their mind they think.
Yeah.
And I always want to go, well, how old is 20? How old is 40? I mean, or what does 20 look like? What does 40 look like? What does 60 look like?
Exactly.
I don't think it means anything. I've never actually related to asking people what their age is. I really, truly don't. It's not from a defensive standpoint. I really, truly don't care. It just doesn't cross my mind to be important that I would ask that, but that's not normal.
Well, it's interesting that society says don't ask women what their age is, but you can ask men. Like, what does that mean? That it almost shames it more that you can't ask a woman their age, but and even then, you're right, it's irrelevant information. It has nothing to do with who you are.
Yes.
It's an outside way of putting you in a pigeonhole.
And shaming you in some ways. I think.
And shaming you in some way and devaluing you, especially if they see that you're older.
Yes. Oh, you're 50. And even when people say things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and I'm not 50 anymore. Even if you say you're 50 and people say, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're 50, you look great. And then you're like, oh, I'm sorry that I'm 50. Well, that's really a bad number. That's negative. It's the whole current conversation is just a lot of shame, a lot of coming from lack. And I think a lot of, anyway, I'm sure.
And it's interesting as well, just to expand on that, if we compare our society to, say, the indigenous society, where they're elderly, they call them elders. They recognize that they have wisdom, they respect them, they honor them, they take care of them, they value them, which is in quite contrast to our society. But I think that it just keeps going back to ourselves. Like everything has to come to within, and how we shift it and how we change that, it all starts with us.
I just want to say, you know, as you all know, technology reflects our consciousness. And I was reminded of this. I think Troy was the first one that brought up, you know, an actual number. And so this came into my memory, and I remember that this already exists, the technology or the measurement, and what they do now is they measure. And so one organization or clinic or someone that's invented something calls it your real age. Other people do it, other clinics do it, and then they've patented another name. But what they do, you have your chronological age, and then they go in and measure your real age, because what they're measuring is if you've taken care of yourself, you know, if you're healthy, if you know, and all the things that go into, you know, you're happy and you're healthy, etc.
Yes.
And then give you what's called your real age, which, you know, can be different from your chronological age. So I thought that was just interesting, because technology is already reflecting that. You know, they can actually measure that. And then I did want to follow up with Liz's point, because, you know, when we say society and the age thing, but you know, that's really relatively new in our society to have switched to this younger age, because I grew up in the South and I can still remember you respect your elders, and everyone knew when grandma or grandpa or your aunt, when they walked in, they got the best chair. They got to eat whatever they wanted. Everybody else had to follow rules, but the elders got to, if they needed to get up and go take a nap, they didn't have to stay at the table. They were just coveted, they were just allowed. Everybody just knew, you helped them, and they got to do whatever they wanted to do, when they wanted to do it. And I could remember there was also this sort of general excitement, like, oh, so-and-so's coming. Meaning, wow, they're able, and it was, wow, they can get out, that they're going to make it, kind of feeling like if the old person could come, there was a certain amount of accomplishment or excitement, like, oh, okay, well, you've got the top event then, because, the great aunts are coming or something. So, I can still remember that in our culture. Thanks.
I love that. I wanted to also say something following up with Liz's. She mentioned that there's certain ages may actually be triggers for us, in that however we were raised. I wasn't raised in a similar environment to Sharon, and it was definitely there wasn't that level of respect for elder people in my life. I wasn't shown that, really. It wasn't shown that through my parents or through the culture that I was raised in. But what I noticed is there's certain ages that'll trigger somebody's own belief system. And I was also doing a deep meditation before the call, and I was shown this experience last summer when I was out on the boat visiting in Sandpoint, and some family and close friends were there. And this friend of mine that I've probably known him about 25 years. And I said, well, how's it going? He seemed like not himself. And he said, oh, I've been working a lot. And, I turned 50. And I knew he had turned 50. I've known him a long time, and I knew he'd turned 50 in February, and this was July, and like it was as if what I was seeing was how his belief, whatever it was, whatever program came into his being around turning 50, had actually diminished his life force. And everything, it was like, oh, I can't do that now. And it was more blatant than a lot of those beliefs when they start to kick up. But it was like he took on this weight that said, oh, now I'm old. Even though, in my mind, 50, it's just, I was like, what are you talking about? You're not old, but his whole way of being completely shifted in relationship to the beliefs. And my mom also kind of took that on when she turned 64. And I do kind of think that had to do with that Beatles song. And when she was pretty young, the song had come out, and I'm sure that song, the idea of being 64, when I'm 64, it's like, so old. And she really started to be like, whoa, I'm 64. Like, what does that say? And here she is running around and doing, this was kind of as her memory issues were just starting to come up, and she was still drinking and, being pretty wild. but it really started to shift the way that she was engaging the world and the way she saw herself. And so it was like, wow, these numbers can create such incredible limitations if we allow them to.
That's
Pretty.
I agree. It's the limitations that we as humans, and we're not, and we're moving into this time of consciousness. I don't believe it has to be that way in the future, but I had a similar experience this morning, Blissa. So I went to work out with someone, with a trainer who's, not something I do all the time, but I started this morning. So I went with him, and he's absolutely in great shape, very handsome. He turned 40, and he says, oh, now, like a month ago, he goes, oh, before my 40th birthday, I could lose weight easily. Now I can't lose weight easily. So it was like he on this, like you said, the mantle being 50, the mantle being 40. Oh, now I can't lose weight.
Yeah.
Like we self like proclaim these things because that's historically what we've done, but I don't think we have to.
And to take that a step further, if you look at last week, our conversation, at one point we were talking about this book that somebody was reading about this woman who was 400 years old, and our bodies are designed to last for hundreds of years. But the fact is that in our society, somewhere along the way, we've adopted this belief or programming that 80 is kind of the normal age to die. And, 80, if you're in your late 80s, 90, oh, you're doing really well. And somehow, and I think it's also maybe on a collective level, we have this program that's kind of a normal age to die. And it's interesting that, and I think that because there's the programming that actually then we create that. As a society, we create that. So that is the normal age, or a kind of a normal age.
Exactly.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. We can have a conversation and recreate what that is with the universe. Absolutely. And that was part of my channeling I got to today earlier about, there's nobody says we can't live to bodies. We're created to live to. That was the book that we were talking about that actually Troy recommended to me, and Mandy mentioned that she read too. It's called, if I get this right, Troy, Anna, Grandmother of Jesus. That's the book. It's Is that correct, Troy? That was the name of it. You're on mute. Troy, you're on. You're on. I'll ask him to unmute.
I believe that
I'm
was
unmuting. Okay, yes, that is the book. And I couldn't do it. I kept pressing and pressing. Claire Hart song. Anna, Grandmother of Jesus.
Anna, Grandmother of Jesus, yeah. So my download I got today said, as a matter of fact, I'm going to read a channel either on the 3rd or 4th part series that I got channeled, which was kind of what sort of pulled me into this conversation even more about all this. Anyway, back in January, so I'll read that. I'm going to read it during the call, but I definitely got that same thing today, that like our bodies are capable of lasting, just like Matt brought up last week, our bodies are capable of lasting much longer if we don't find an agreement that they're supposed to deteriorate always, that has to happen.
They're self-healing.
Yeah.
Body is designed to self-heal. And there's a lot of programs that are telling us that that's not the case. But when we look further into those programs, they're usually motivated by profit, and then the idea that, marketing and then the idea that, maybe that someone, as they get older, they have less to contribute. And therefore, on maybe some level, there's less desire to have these older people around if they're not going to be buying things. It's kind of a deeper program than, we've got to take those programs on ourselves and see what resonates and what needs to be cleared. Like, I wonder what age, I've always felt like old was just a little bit older than my parents, maybe 5 or 10 years older than my parents. And now my dad is 80 and I'm like, you know, he does kind of seem like a grumpy old man in a lot of ways, but it's still like in the mindset. There's so much of the mindset, and I don't know what that trigger is for me. You know, I've always kind of had that, well, it's older than my parents, whatever that is. And now I see that sort of dissolved. So that's not necessarily true anymore. But I loved what Troy said, because when, you know, if you've taken however many times you've gone around the sun, I mean, that's mastery, you know. So there is something incredible about having been around the sun, you know, 40, 50, 60, 80 times, and have those experiences. If you keep learning and you keep growing and you keep loving yourself more and more, you're actually an incredibly precious resource to humanity by acknowledging that within yourself. And I love that, you know, just really seeing the age is just how many times you've gone around the sun. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I received a channel the next day after our last meeting, which was so inspiring for me. I really got a lot from it, and I was really thinking about it and bringing it up a lot. But what I received was that the resistance, like we were talking about, just like physical, like what happens on the physical level, talking to your cellular structure, loving your body, like acknowledging what you're saying to your body through your conscious, and, you know, looking at where you're unconsciously speaking to your body. But what I received was this message showing that it's really resistance on all levels that creates aging. And we kind of talked about it. We had a call the next day, so like Troy and Diane were on the call, and we talked about that idea of resistance on all levels. And I was listening to the council, just something in the archives. I kind of scroll through and like, which one am I supposed to listen to? Boom, listen to that. And they said it, and this was a one from a couple years ago, and they said exactly that resistance is like the aging factor, you know, on all levels. You know, like when we're resisting our emotions, when we're resisting in our minds or our journey or the guidance that we're receiving, when we're resisting our bodies, all of these things contribute to the aging process.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that resistance was really a key thing that we talked about last week. And yeah, it affects so much. So affects everything, and affects our health, affects our aging process, everything, all of that. Don, you probably got something to say about it. Oh, Matt, you were gonna speak next? Did you?
Sure.
I thought you had your.
Am I next now or after? Okay.
Yeah, I thought you would put your.
Okay, sure. A couple of weeks ago, I had a very good experience. I had a Cuban cigar. It was aged 13 years. And I had a glass of rum. It was aged 23 years. So they were fantastic. I mean, the cigar was very balanced. The flavor of the cigar, the flavor of the rum was fantastic, well balanced. So when you look at those pairs, so you think that aging is a very good thing. So aging is fantastic because they aged well. So when you age well, aging is a very, very good thing. Sometimes I give an example of 3 people. Imagine 3 people, they are at their 60s. They're all 60 years old, 3 of them. When you look at the first one, he looks 10 years younger based on the collective, expectancy of the people, classifications and things like that. So he looks 10 years younger. He looks about 50s. Second one shows his age. He looks like 60. The third one looks a little bit older, and he looks like he's 70 years old. Now, what is the age difference between the first person and the third person? It's 20 years. So one of them really aged well, the other one didn't age well. They put us in a system. The system want us to die. So they classification says you are a baby, and then child, and then teenager, young adult, and senior, and then you gotta go, because they didn't have another classification after seniors. So they want you to go after become a senior. So the system works like the system wants you to die. And if you wanna live healthy, they want you to, they wanna tell you exercise, stay away from red meat, maybe any type of meat, try to eat vegetables and fruits. But they never tell you not to worry about your past, no regrets, and not to worry about your future. So the key thing to age well is to stay in the moment and not worry about your future, and no regrets about the past.
And have a good age cigar and a good age rum every once in a while.
I just thought of something. When you say senior now, instead of thinking nothing's after senior, say, no, I'm going into graduate and then postgraduate. So, it's wide open from here. Senior is only one level before I go into the next few levels.
Oh, I like that, Troy. Yeah, we're not there. Yeah, it's just a step. Because I believe we can, yes, it doesn't have to mean anything that it's not. Don, I think you were going to say something, because I know this is something that, and a lot of us know each other because we're part of a members community of a master's group. And I know Don has, just loving your body is something I know Don has shared a channel with many of us about, and she's actually going to share it on the full thing on one of the podcasts we're going to do in the future. But I'm sure you have something to contribute about all that, Don, that you want to say.
Well, loving your body and loving yourself, I never even dreamed that I could conceive of what that was like. And when in that channeling course, and I channeled my body and realized it just wanted love, it changed everything, and it changed everything about how I feel about my body, and I've never felt better in my life. During that channeling course, I also wanted to find out about timekeeping and why that started and where it even came from and what the whole purpose was. And it just seems like it was to determine the age of something to see if it had any value. I mean, you find something when you're digging around. Oh, this looks like it might be really old. It might be really old. It might be an antique. It might be something prehistoric. Oh, no, it's just a piece of garbage. And it all depended on the age. And for me, as far as my age goes, I have felt the same age my entire life. I don't feel any different. Every once in a while I look in the mirror and I see my mother and I think, oh yeah, I've aged a bit. But I feel exactly the same age as I did when I was a kid. I don't feel any like there's a number associated with me.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. And I think that's why I get so perplexed sometimes when people are always asking how old something is. I think I shared last time that when I share with people that my father is not feeling well, the first question out of their mouth is, how old is he? And I just literally want to think, what difference does it make? I literally had a guy at a gas station once. I'd never met them pumping gas, he's pumping gas. And he said something like, oh, you're really pretty or something. I what he said. And then the second question was, how old are you? I don't know this person from Adam. Why would you ask me? And why does it matter? And yeah, I think that brings us. So how do you, like, I don't care what the number I've been around this, and I really don't, but I don't necessarily want to answer always, and not because I'm defensive about my age, because I feel the same as always. I just don't want somebody to pigeonhole me. Like, I'm tempted to say something like, well, I'm somewhere between 29 and 92, you pick. But then I'm sure people would not like that response. Sometimes they would think I was being sarcastic, but I'm not being sarcastic. I honestly feel, well, I'm somewhere there. I don't know, you choose. So how do we not keep continuing to buy into this where we get pigeonholed by whatever that number is? And not from a negative standpoint, just not let it mean anything. And I think that was the other thing somebody was going to earlier about the meaning that we give things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the meaning.
I don't associate my life with numbers. It could be a quick one answer. There's no number that really associates with my life.
I like that.
Or I think I am.
I just play around with the whole idea of like, well, I don't identify as an age. I started to play around with that when I realized what I experienced in telling people my age as I got, especially like throughout most of my 40s, when I would say how old I was, there would be like, oh, just sort of this, oh, I thought you were, younger. And
how dare you be?
And it's like a backhanded compliment. It's like, oh, I thought you had more value is really, and maybe that's part of the programming that I have, but it's like, oh, I thought you had more value. I thought you were in this other category, but you're actually in this category. And so when people started to really, say they didn't identify as a man or a woman, it doesn't resonate for me. But I thought, well, I'm not, I could say I'm not identifying as an age, and many other things that people like the boxes, and like, I don't want to be in any of your boxes. Sorry. But I am a woman.
But that's really their thing, how they choose to interpret that or make up whatever stories or pigeonholing. I mean, that's on them. I think for us, it's like, how come, like quite often I will, when I get to know people, and a lot of new people have come into my life, and it's interesting to notice how I think as a society that we are curious. We do want to, for some reason, we do want to know how old people are. I'm not sure exactly the reason why. But I find that I'm starting to maybe just volunteer that information. It's usually about along the lines of, I can't believe that I'm X age.
I know Liz is in an island up in Vancouver. It's a little island in the middle, so sometimes our internet's a little slow. So Liz, you may want to repeat that. Can you repeat that, Liz?
Oh, did you not?
Yeah, we.
Okay, did you not? Am I freezing or cutting out?
Just a little slow. So you were saying that you
in my connection.
Okay, well, we can come back to Liz in a minute. Anyway,
I'm just my internet connection here is not the most stable.
Yeah, you're kind of far out there.
Let me just, I'll switch my video off. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, better.
Okay, yeah, my internet's not the most stable. I apologize for that. I was just speaking about, however people perceive us, and if they want to put us in boxes, judge us, whatever it is, I mean, that's there, that's on them. And it's up to us whether we're going to drag that into our realities or not. And I've just been observing myself. I usually share my age at some point once I've gotten to know people. And usually it's around, I can't believe that at this age, I didn't realize until this age that, I mean, one of the things for me was I didn't realize that I was a people pleaser. It took me 55 years to realize I was a people pleaser. So, I think it's really up to us how comfortable we are. And if we're not comfortable, then I think that's maybe an area that we maybe need to look a little bit deeper. But I do, in response to someone else's comment, I do remember my aunt saying to me, this was a few years ago, she said to me, Liz, I look in the mirror and I see this old woman looking back at me and I don't know who she is, that's not how I feel, but there's this old woman. And I think it's true that we do all still feel young within ourselves. And I think that really is our greatest indicator, to feel young, as opposed to focusing on a number.
Or to feel, even the feeling young now, I think I understand what you're saying, but I like to feel healthy and vital and the best I am and the most amazing, so even, and I know you didn't mean it this way, but it was interesting the way you brought it up, so thank you, is that saying feel young as opposed to feeling old. And once again, there should be no young, old. It's, maybe not.
Yeah, and it's interesting the words that we use, and this is how we can see a lot of stuff is when words come out, and it's like, oh, why did I say that?
Yeah, that our words, and we're all the same way. I'm still like, I want my words to be impeccable, and they're not always impeccable for me. And it's something I'm trying to be even consciousness as I'm saying things sometimes to be more impeccable with my words. And for those who are listening, not impeccable necessarily a true, like you're not being disingenuous, but impeccable as of the highest perspective. Are they of the highest perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Sandy, thanks for sharing that.
The other, I have one of the mantras that I got when I was doing a channel probably back in January was, I choose to live in a fully functional and perfectly beautiful body that is unaffected by our concept of time. So that is kind of a mantra that I've, when I remember, I say, I'd like to say them 3 times. So I'll say that 3 times daily. So, and obviously perfectly beautiful may not apply to maybe perfectly handsome or whatever, but the most important thing is fully functional, because I want my body to be fully functional and I want to feel as beautiful, and not by the human concept of what beauty is, but beauty from the higher perspective as well. Beauty, that there's beauty in everything, if we look for it and put meaning in that beauty. So
I like that, being unaffected by the concept of time.
By our,
It has an element of magic to it.
Yeah. What came, it came to me.
Mm-hmm. It has that magic. And that's how I can describe my transformation about age, is that it just isn't there. And I used to make sure, like today I had an eye doctor appointment, right? So I said, oh, maybe I should fix my hair because, I'm retired, I'm home, I'm living vacation every day. Maybe I should put on a nice shirt or whatever, look good. And then I said, who gives a crap?
Perfect.
I don't care if they think
It's
old and unable to be pretty anymore. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. I mean,
and you say that and look how beautiful you look. So see.
Thanks. I mean, I took an early retirement I was like 61, and I was supposed to work till 65, but all things pointed to leaving at that point. And The first few years were sort of an adjustment. And now I feel like I'm living the most magical, abundant life. I'm on vacation every day. Everybody should do this. The creativity, the magic, really, it's just phenomenal. So don't even use the word age. Don't worry about it. And if people want to use it, so let them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you can't blame society or all that kind of stuff. You can go over that in your head over and over and over again. I was raised in the same vein-centered, youth-centered society, as everybody else. But once you get to that certain point where like something opens up, some beauty opens up, some magic opens up. And it's like it doesn't exist in your persona. It doesn't exist in your awareness and your consciousness. So I'm not going to say I'm totally like unaffected by society's numbers, but more and more and more and more, they don't have or hold any meanings for me. So
I love that, Diana. Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. Because part of my question, so we're going to get to our fourth, so we have two more parts after this, and our fourth one, we're going to talk about some, ways to look at this and tips, techniques, and anyway, not like anyway, we'll talk about that in the fourth, but I think you're illustrating kind of what that is. It's living in the magic. And then my question was, do you think we'll be able to get to this in our lifetime? So we're almost out of time. So I think that's a good conversation too when we start next time too. Is this a perspective that we can see us getting to in our lifetime, in addition to the other subject that we're talking about on our? So does anybody? I mean, we have time. Does anybody have anything that they really want to add right now at this point? It's been.
Yeah,
Yes.
May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we are all old souls. What I mean by that, we have reincarnated many times. I'm talking about the all of us here, 3, 6, 8 of us. So we have been, in these human experiences many times. So I think we age very well. So we came to a point right now. We are about to switch to the 4th dimension, and then followed by the 5th dimension. So I think our ascension is around the corner, means that we age well. Now our wisdom and our level of energy and vibration level is high enough for us to make us to the next level. So I think we age well. So I think aging is very good. So that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmet.
That is perfect.
Yeah, I also have an idea on that, which is that as we grow in light and expansion and love, I mean, that is the currency going forward. And I see that in 10 years, the currency. So when you look at the most abundant, the richest, the most vital, it's consciousness. And so if that is what's valued, what does a number have anything to do with that?
Exactly. Thank you, Roy.
Nothing.
And
There's nothing.
I'm sure it's possible because we are creators in our own creation.
absolutely.
And I do believe as our judgments fall away more and more, like Blissa said, our cells will renew and we
Yes.
will age at a slower rate. I really do believe that we will.
Or reverse it.
Or reverse
Become more vital, more everything. Light bodies are vibrant. I mean, just think of the people in the inner planes when they show up, they look like they're 25 years old.
Right. And they say that Saint Germain never aged. because I think
That's right.
He was living in a higher dimension. So, and as I said once before in my email, is that my guides once told me that aging is a judgment. So.
Perfect. Wow, I'm so glad you guys decided to add something else, because everything y'all out, it was perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
See everybody, and we'll see everybody else is watching on YouTube for part 3. Thank you.
Okay.